Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 19th. Welcome to this week's media briefing. Good afternoon to members of the media, as well as our county executive, Mark Elrich. Joining us on the media briefing today, we have Scott Bruton, Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. We also have Carmen Romero, President and CEO at APA, and Dr. Amina Johnson, Community Outreach Manager to LGBTQ+ Community and Community Engagement Cluster, as well as we have Dr. James Bridges, our Director of Health and Human Services, Dr. Keisha Davis, our Health Officer, and Assistant CAO, Dr. Earl Stoddard. Good afternoon, Mr. County Executive.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I want to start with some frustrating news today. I'm pretty disappointed and more than a little bit angry to learn that we had to suspend an MCPD officer, Justin Lee, who was indicted this afternoon by the Department of Justice for participating in the January 6th insurrection. It's a little hard to wrap your head around the idea that you would participate in an insurrection in which people were attacking police, including police from Montgomery County, and then want to work for the same department that you attacked. It's bizarre. It's hard to understand the logic behind that, but that's the reality of what we're dealing with. So at this moment, I've got a lot more questions than I have answers. We're trying to understand why the Department of Justice didn't make us aware of Justin Lee's connection to January 6th earlier. And as I understand, for our police department, he had no previous knowledge about his activities, nor were we made aware throughout his interview, background, training, or as a sworn officer until the federal government made this known to us that he was the target of this investigation just a few weeks ago. Once MCPD was made aware that he was the target, Chief Jones immediately and rightfully removed his police powers. Now that Mr. Lee has been indicted, he's currently suspended without pay, pending termination. On January 6, 2021, the men and women of Montgomery County responded bravely to assist the law enforcement at the Capitol. And to this day, we still have MCPD officers out on leave for injuries they sustained that day. And it makes it, I guess, extra troubling that Mr. Lee chose to keep his involvement in this event secret. Moving forward, our police is reviewing its background and polygraph procedures to ensure that the process and questions weed out anyone with that insurrectionist ideology. And officers' trustworthiness is the most important asset, and both the community and their fellow officers need to be able to trust the person. It's evident that Mr. Lee failed that standard of trust that we expect from our MCPD officers. We postponed this briefing from yesterday because of the tragic events that played out on I-270 early yesterday morning. I joined Montgomery County Police Chief Marcus Jones as he updated the community about what happened. As many of you are aware, a dangerous driver going up and down I-270 at more than 100 miles an hour intentionally hit one of our MCPD officers who was trying to stop him. That police officer is Sergeant Patrick Kep, a 9-year veteran of the department, and Sergeant Kep is a highly decorated officer who is expert in impaired driving prevention and training officers regularly at the police academy. He spent yesterday at shock trauma in Baltimore, surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues. He lost both of his legs in this incident, and his life has been forever changed. And I extend my sympathies to this officer, his family, and every member of MCPD. Governor Moore called me yesterday and expressed his support and well wishes for Sergeant Kep and his family and our entire department. And the governor told me he also reached out to the Kep family. I appreciated the governor's call and his concern for the welfare of our police officers, all of our police officers, during this difficult time. During that conversation, I mentioned to the governor that the individual responsible for this had been stopped many times, leading to many citations and minor warnings, including suspension of his driver's license. When the charges pile up and behavior is not impacted, it means the penalties we have are simply not enough. He didn't have a license at the time. He violated other aspects. He had some criminal charges against him. He violated, the terms of his release. But I think the thing that was most disturbing to me was that when we asked what he'd been charged with in the past for this kind of behavior. He was given traffic tickets for going too fast. So here's a person who's not just racing home from work for whatever reason, which is bad enough as it is. This is somebody who took his cars, I should say, because apparently he had 4 of them, put them on the road, drove rapidly and recklessly, put people in danger. He tried to bait police officers into chasing him, knowing that our rules are that you don't participate in high-speed chases. So his behavior goes beyond getting a speeding ticket because you were going too fast to work. This is deliberate, wanton behavior, and this has got to get its own separate penalty. And it ought to be a criminal penalty, not a ticket for going too fast. And then in the end, using his automobile as a dangerous weapon that could threaten lives. And in fact, he actually came very close to killing the officer involved. And, the damage he's done to that officer is enormous. So as we prepare for the General Assembly, I'm going to support legislation that would heavily penalize this kind of driving. This includes those clowns that do the donuts in the middle of the road, the motorcyclists driving 120 miles an hour, riding in and out of traffic. At some point, this has got to be treated as something other than just a traffic offense. It is not just a traffic offense, and it puts a lot of people at risk. And, we expect our officers to put their lives on the line every day. Sergeant Kep put his life in danger to prevent others from being hurt or killed. And this is a sacrifice he should not have had to make. Other happier news, producing, preserving, protecting affordable housing in this county is a top priority for us. Earlier today, I helped celebrate the grand opening of a redesigned colonnade at the creek in Tacoma Park. Our partner, MHB, spent more than a year fully renovating this property. It was built in 1934, and after years of disrepair, plumbing, roofing, windows were all issues that needed to be addressed. A total of 96 units were redone. All of the available units will be rented to families making 60% of the area's average median income or less, including 13 units that are meant for families making 30% of the area median income. I'm really proud of this project, and this is a really important project. One of the special things is this project was a problem in Tacoma Park when I was on the council. So we're talking about going back 17, 18 years. It was a horribly maintained building, and no amount of citations ever got the landlord to really bring the building into compliance. And that in itself speaks to some of the limits of the laws we have in the county, and we're looking at what we can do to strengthen them in order to absolutely require compliance, as opposed to go through this kind of game with a person for decades trying to get the building to be properly maintained. Since July, on the bright side, we closed 6 new deals on projects that will generate 754 affordable units for county residents. While each of these projects require different levels of funding, the overall cost to the county was about $58,000 per unit. And it's just a fraction of what we've been able to accomplish over the last few years. We've provided record funding for affordable housing. Over the last 18 months, Montgomery County has helped produce or preserve 1,700 affordable units, and several additional projects will close in the next few months that in themselves will add another 1,500 units. And one of those projects we're going to talk about is the big deal at the Falkland Chase Complex in Silver Spring. The plan will convert 170 garden-style units into at least 1,250 units. We're investing about $20 million in this project to support it, and we're partnering with Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, who purchased the property for $36.5 million. We're making this investment not only so families can afford to stay in their homes, but to create new economical and low-cost housings for more working families. And a successful project here may lead to a future collaboration with APAH. They're good partners, and this is going to be really beneficial to the community, particularly to provide this kind of affordable housing close to transit and close to the downtown. I want to point out the Park and Planning originally approved the plan for this project that would have displaced the affordable units and would have created 1,250 mostly luxury units with no effort to expand affordability. That was Park and Planning's quote unquote vision for what they would do there. I want to point out we have a very different vision. We have people in this county who need housing, and we're going to continue to provide housing to people in this county. We're not going to settle for a tiny trickle of affordable housing while most of what gets built doesn't serve the bulk of the residents in this county. So I'm really happy to have APAH as a partner here. And I also want to thank our DHCA department and Director Scott Bruton. And he shares my belief that we can't sit back and expect the development community to build us out of this affordable housing crisis. That's not going to happen. They don't build affordable housing unless they're required to build it as a rule. If we do nothing, we're going to watch our affordable housing stock dry up and be replaced with units that too many of our residents cannot afford. In case people wonder if this is possible, this actually happened in Arlington, where they lost in the first decade almost all the affordable housing that existed over there. Affordable housing is hard to keep as the market changes and developers sense there are residents who have higher incomes and can pay more. It's easy to buy these older buildings and then convert them or tear them down and build larger buildings that will have much lower levels of affordability. And I think some of you heard me talk about some of the projects in Bethesda, where parking planning targeted small low-rise buildings that were built deliberately in the master plan to provide workforce housing and target those projects to be redeveloped into high-rises, again, with minimum amount of affordable housing. We're not playing that way, and we're trying to set an example for what we can do to provide more housing, and we're going to keep doing this. And at this point, I want to turn it over to Carmen Romero, President and CEO of Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, talk to us more about the Falkland Chase project. And I just want to thank you so much because you're a great partner in this.
Well, I'm honored, and my entire organization is honored to partner with the county on this incredible opportunity to do both immediate preservation and then long-term redevelopment to maximize the affordable housing that can be brought to the site, and to really take a thoughtful approach. When we do affordable housing, and this is, we are a nonprofit committed to, when we sign up to do a development, it's long-term affordability. And in this case, 75 years of affordability is what we committed to at the initial closing of the 170 units. But we know, as you mentioned, that there's zoning that we can unlock here, and that is an area of expertise of our nonprofit. We currently have 5 projects under construction in the region today, and have another project, 500 units, that we're breaking ground on in the next 60 days. So but it all comes down to land, because without land, you can't do that. And really the county's bold leadership, the county executive, Scott Bruton and his team, to partner with us when we had an opportunity to have an off-market option to take down this asset that, as the county executive mentioned, is ideal. A lot of people build affordable housing where you shouldn't be building it. I believe strongly we should be building affordable housing in areas of opportunity like Montgomery County, with incredible access to transit, amenities, schools, public safety. And that is the development that I'm so excited to be able to bring to Montgomery County. This is our second transaction in the county. Our first was several years ago with a development that we were also able to negotiate from a longtime owner to preserve 100% affordable housing, serving all 100% housing choice voucher recipients that average income was under 30% AMI. This is going to be different. It's at the scale of over 1,200 units. We're going to maximize the affordable housing, and there may be some mixed income opportunities for parts of the program too, to cross subsidize. But those will be decisions that the county will help us evaluate. What are the best scenarios for really the community at large? And we take a thoughtful approach to planning, and we've already gone out to, I think, 11 architectural and planning groups, really the best that we could find all over the region, the country, and even internationally, to get that expertise alongside of us as we evaluate options, because we know this is a very special opportunity, and we want it to be really a model for what inclusive development can look like. and we want to be very thoughtful about it. So it's going to take us some time to come forward with what that looks like. And we know that there's many steps in terms of the process and approvals that we need to step forward, but it all starts with the acquisition. And Montgomery County has some incredible tools, including a pilot program that you have here to support affordable housing. We do not have that in Virginia. It's a very powerful tool that also helps make the economics of a preservation deal like this possible. So I want to extend my thanks for aligning with us to make this happen in a very, very short timeline, because our seller needed to consummate the transaction by the end of September, and we were able to do that.
That's exciting. Thank you. Scott, do you want to say a few words? You're muted.
I always do that. If you'd like, I can give just kind of a little data snapshot to go along with the general numbers you gave earlier. To note that in FY23, we closed a total of 12 projects using about $165 million of county funds to produce or preserve 975 affordable housing units. And then just in the first quarter of FY24, we've already closed 6 additional projects, which received about $44 million in county funds to produce or preserve 754 affordable units. And then we have 10 more projects that are slotted to close before the end of the calendar year, which will get another $52 million in county funds and produce or preserve another 607 units of affordable housing. And in addition to that, we've also entered into multiple rental agreements. That's where we put affordability on properties that are already existing and not changing hands or redeveloping. And just in the past, in this first quarter of FY24, through the rental agreements, we preserved an additional 531 units across 5 developments of affordable housing.
Thank you, Scott. At this point, we'll open up for any questions from members of the media, but please keep your questions at this time for either Scott Bruton or Carmen Romero in terms of affordable housing, or if you have any questions for the county executive on affordable housing, as well as the MCPD or the injured officer. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Heather Curtis?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. Hi. Thanks, Mark. I'm wondering, County Executive, have you spoken, I know this tragedy just happened yesterday, but have you spoken with any lawmakers about wanting to create criminal penalties for people who do not belong on the road? And did you speak with the governor about this, and did he seem like he would be on board?
I did speak to the governor about this, and he is going to talk to his people about it. I think this is a serious thing, and I know that a lot of people feel that it can take years for some things to go through the assembly. I think these kind of cases ought to be clear enough, and the risk to people ought to be clear enough that the assembly can act a little bit more quickly on this. We're in a real conundrum, because you'll hear residents say we have all this speeding and our officers aren't doing anything to pull people over. And that's because we're trying to avoid high speed chases, which could wind up putting a lot of people at risk. And so it's not a very satisfying answer, but as long as people feel like they can keep doing this, and you can give them a ticket if you get their license plate number, but that's small compensation, and they wind up getting a traffic ticket. There has to be something more serious for people, particularly people who repeatedly do this. And this is just a flat out public safety issue. And we all ought to be able to come together and say, no, it is not appropriate to allow people to drive 3,000 and 4,000 pound vehicles at 100-mile-an-hour speeds through regular streets, or even on a road like I-270 with all the other cars on there and the people around. So hopefully the legislature can act quickly and reasonably on this.
Thank you so
Can I
much.
add one comment
Oh,
too?
yes,
I was in the courtroom for the bond hearing this afternoon, and was glad to see that the suspect was held without bond. But one of the things that came out during the bond hearing today is that the police knew this individual to the point where they were actually calling him in his vehicle as he was speeding in previous, not in this most recent incident, but in previous incidents. And his response when speaking to them, when he would respond, would say something to the effect, "You're going to have to catch me to stop me." And so this clearly goes well beyond the situation where it was speeding. This was a clear intent to bait officers into a chase, and that itself really should be a criminal conduct itself. You know, a specific line item within the code where you're in an effort to try and bait officers into a chase through repetitive conduct like this, that really should be an additional charge. And that's what I think we're in the legislature.
Yep. And I'll add, I was very happy that no bond was granted. I mean, there's this individual, there's no way you could possibly trust this individual to suddenly decide that he would be responsible with the vehicle he was driving. He's indicated already he doesn't care what law enforcement thinks. So he can stay in jail for a long time, and hopefully the first degree attempted murder will stick, and he'll spend a lot of time not menacing the public.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Any other questions from members of the media? Okay, at this point, it does not look like we have any other questions. Mr. County Executive, if you'd like to proceed.
Yep. So we'll talk a little bit about the LGBTQ plus community survey. We got results from our first community survey, the 2023 survey. October is LGBTQ plus History Month. And I encourage everyone to take a moment and recognize the centuries, decades, long oppression and struggles, and eventually the triumphs of this community to earn equal white rights and protections. And it was only 50 years ago, in 1973, when I was in my early 20s, that the American Psychiatric Association, the largest psychiatric association in the world, made history by issuing a resolution declaring that homosexuality was no longer a mental illness or sickness. That's just 50 years ago. When I was on the Tacoma Park City Council, we had to fight to make sure partners of patients at the hospital would be assured access to their loved ones. Literally, gay couples were not allowed to be at the bedside of their companions when they were sick, hurt, or dying if someone objected to it. So if the hospital didn't recognize this person as being in a relationship, and they said only relatives can come in and visit the person, if you were in a long-term relationship with somebody, but you weren't married because the law didn't let you get married, you couldn't be there. Or if somebody's parents were there and said, we object, this person is not part of a family, they don't have a family, they're not a relationship, they could block people from coming in. So what the city did was we created the domestic registry, one of the first of its kind, that allowed couples to register their relationships so that they could, if somebody wound up in a hospital, they could come in and say, we're in a relationship, we've registered in Tacoma Park our relationship, and that enabled them to be able to see their partners who were in the hospital. It seems like a small thing at the time. We got a little bit of blowback for doing that, but we didn't set the world on fire for doing it. And I feel really good that we were willing to take that first step, early in this process of trying to, gain acceptance for everybody in this country to be able to be recognized who they are, how they are. Maryland was the very first state in the union to pass the same-sex marriage by public referendum. That was a little over a decade ago, and that legislation was originally sponsored by our Chief Administrative Officer, Richard Madaleno, when he was then a state senator. And today our LGBTQ plus, that is hard to say sometimes, I will confess. Individuals are more welcomed, accepted, and protected than ever before. But they continue to face challenges, discrimination, and even hate, even in a community as progressive, diverse, and inclusive as Montgomery County. To better help us understand and serve our residents, we conducted the county's first ever LGBTQ plus community survey last year. We had over 800 respondents to the survey, which is a pretty good response, and I'm grateful for all those who took part in the survey and took the time to share their thoughts with us. The survey asked our LGBTQ plus community whether they felt safe and welcome in Montgomery County, and about their experiences with housing, healthcare, and interacting with law enforcement. So as you can see, you know, our community, where's this graphic here online? Okay, 3 out of 4 respondents consider Montgomery County a safe place to live. And as an openly as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, over 45% of those surveyed experienced discrimination in at least one place in the county over the last year. And nearly 1 in 4 respondents stated that they experienced this discrimination in a public space. And those are higher numbers than we certainly want, and a little bit, I'd say, frankly, higher than we expected. Another graphic from that report shows that transgender, gender expansive, questioning residents experience more difficulty with housing stability, access to healthcare, as well as more negative interactions with law enforcement than our non-transgender, expansive, and questioning residents do. And since the survey was the first of the kind, it gives us a baseline so we can see how we measure up as we go forward. It shows there's more we can do in the coming years to increase resources and create opportunities for more inclusion in every sector. And with that, I want to welcome Amina Johnson, our LGBTQ plus community liaison, to talk more about the survey and what you found.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. County Executive. Those slides that you have were great. I'm going to share my screen and just share a few more things with everyone, if I could. Oh, well, there we go. All right. So I'm going to go back a little bit just to give you some demographics on the survey. As the county executive said, there were over 800 respondents in this survey. And among those respondents, the majority of them described their gender as either male or female. And the largest proportion of the respondents described their sexual orientation as gay or bisexual or pansexual. And the majority of the respondents were between the ages of 19 and 44. Something to note about this is that that does not align with the Montgomery County's population. And so those aged 65 and older were only 5% of this survey, but in the census, there's 16.6% of the population. So that is an underrepresented population. Something else you should know about are the goals for this survey. We wanted to inform the county and myself, the liaison, inform the work that we do to help folks in our county. We also wanted to inform future surveys, identify ways we can improve the healthcare system, housing, etc. Some partners that we had on this survey, we did this in collaboration between the Office of Community Partnerships, myself, the LGBTQ liaison, the LGBTQ advisory group, and the Department of Health and Human Services. And they launched the survey for us. After this, I'm going to give you a website, which is www.montgomerycountypride.org. That's where you can find the survey as well as find other information about it. All right. And so something to note about the respondent demographics is that 1/3, 30% of the respondents identified as transgender, trans, non-binary, or under that gender expansive umbrella. And that was actually really important information. That is a good chunk of our population. And mind you, we didn't, survey the entire LGBTQ population, but a good chunk of people are transgender. As far as race breaks down, the majority of the folks who took the survey were white. 67%. Again, this does not necessarily align with the census demographics for the county. So we know that the next time we do the survey that people of color and other races are a population that has been underserved. As far as where in the county, most folks in the county took the survey in Silver Spring or along the 270 corridor, Part of the reason that most of the people took the survey in Silver Spring is that I was at Pride in Silver Spring. And so we got a lot of people that day. But that does not necessarily reflect everywhere. But we did hit everywhere in the county. But mainly the 270 corridor was the main place. The county executive already talked about the feelings of safety, but just something to note that transgender folks felt slightly less safe than folks that were not transgender. And then the county executive talked about this as well, about 45% of folks not feeling safe. And these are some of the places that they did not feel safe. Mostly in public spaces, in the workplace, faith settings, and in schools. Those are the top 4. And this is really important work that we need to do in our county with schools, faith organizations, and workplaces. These are places that folks felt safe. Bars and nightclubs, LGBTQ organizations, Tacoma Park, Silver Spring, Rockville came up. Some churches and synagogues definitely came up, and some government agencies. And these were some suggestions about how to make Montgomery County more safe. And so to communicate the inclusion. So having the county have flags, have communication about LGBTQ folks, Pride and other events. We already have Pride, but we need to have some other events. More LGBTQ representation in government. An LGBTQ community center. Since I've been here for almost 3 years, this is one of the number one things that folks have asked for is a community center. They say that there needs to be a cultural shift in awareness and intersectionality, accountability, hate speech and homophobia, and several other things. One of the other notable things, and this is a little bit hard to see, I realized that once I blew it up, is that many respondents had never, 31% had never been tested for HIV. And that actually increased with the transgender community. 40% of the trans and non-binary community had never been tested. And we all know that we live in an area where we have high rates of HIV, and it's very important for folks to get tested. County executive talked about housing. Trans folks have a little bit more difficulty, but overall, people are okay with finding housing. And this is about law enforcement. Most of the folks, the question was, have you had interaction with law enforcement in the past year? Most folks had not, 65%, but of those that did, especially when you look at the difference between transgender folks and non-transgender folks, more transgender folks had negative experiences with the police than non-transgender folks did. Again, most folks had a very positive experience, but you can just look at the difference. These are the folks that are not transgender. 31% had a very positive experience. Of the folks that were trans, 15% had a very positive experience. So that's a huge difference. So that's all that I have. I'm gonna stop sharing and send you all a link, put a link in the chat to MontgomeryCountyPride.org. This is where you can find resources in Montgomery County for LGBTQ folks. HHS did this site for us, and it is wonderful. If, as you're looking at this site, you know of something that is not mentioned, please let me know. My contact information is there. The survey can also be found on that website. I'm going to give you a direct link to the survey as well, where you can review this information. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Amina Johnson. Are there any members of the media who have questions about the LGBTQ+ survey? If you do, please raise your hand. Going once, twice. Okay, it does not look like we have any questions. Mr. County Executive, if you'd like to continue.
Yeah. Before we pivot to our weekly health report, I want to take a moment to update people on the continued anxiety and fear from the terror attack and subsequent war in the Middle East. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had many conversations with people in the Jewish and Muslim communities and others with Middle Eastern connections. And While our diverse communities fear for the safety of their family and friends abroad, they also fear for themselves and their loved ones here at home in Montgomery County, and worrying about what horrors could occur here in their neighborhoods, synagogues, and mosques. And the recent murder of a 6-year-old kid in Chicago does not contribute to a sense of well-being or security for people. As a local government with significant Jewish and Muslim communities, we're committed to listening and engaging with our residents who are concerned and feeling attacked and vulnerable. And we know that people in our community are deeply impacted and suffering because of what's happening in Israel and Palestine. As someone who's mostly a listener in these conversations, it's really painful to see the pain that other people are experiencing. There are county employees who are Palestinian and Jewish who've lost loved ones. We have neighbors who are afraid to walk down the streets here in the county, and we're determined that Montgomery County will remain a safe place for everybody. We are not going to change who we are. Civilian deaths are horrifying regardless of where they live. The emotional impact on people from the deaths of loved ones who are simply trying to live their lives and harming no one is severely impacting people. Senseless death is hard to accept. It's not like there's a reason for it. You can't say this person did this or that person did that. It's 1 minute they're there and then the next minute they're not. We're not going to tolerate acts of hate by anyone. I'm hoping that all of us can grieve as we need to, but we can also restrain ourselves from lashing out at our neighbors and friends. And what's happened abroad should not change how we interact with people here. We need our schools to double down on anti-bullying resources for Muslim and Jewish students. Schools should be a safe place for students and should help students to process the hurt and rage they're feeling. We know they're hurt, and we know there's a level of anger out there. We need to be sure we can support the kids in finding their way through that. We need to support our children who are trying to make sense of this, just as a lot of us are trying to make sense of this. So you'll be hearing more from us. We'll be putting out money to nonprofits that feel themselves at risk. We're setting up the process now. We've got the funding available, so we anticipate being able to do this pretty quickly. And I'm sure you that in the next briefing next week, we'll give you the details of what we're doing if we don't make an announcement sooner. And finally, as far as our health update this week, all of the key metrics to gauge the threat from COVID-19 are currently trending down. That means fewer week-to-week hospitalizations, diminishing case rates, and lower test positivity percentages. This is good news, but as weather gets colder, we generally see cases spike. And with holiday gatherings forthcoming, we have to consider those who are most vulnerable to being infected, especially older adults and the immunocompromised. I got my shot last week, and I feel better because I know I've been about a year from my previous shot, and I'm in situations often where I'm in rooms with lots of people, and I honestly feel that I'm better off being protected than I would be if I didn't have a shot. I want to share with you a graph from the Maryland Department of Health that shows 54 deaths in October with a COVID-19 diagnosis. 89% of the deaths were persons 70 or older. So you can see where these deaths are concentrated. It's reminded our seniors are more vulnerable to this disease, and we all need to do our part to help protect them. At this point, nearly everyone is encouraged to get a booster shot. New vaccines are widely available at pharmacies and through doctors' offices. I want to add in, especially that Novavax's vaccine is available for those of you who were avoiding the mRNA vaccines, that there is another alternative now, and it is not an mRNA vaccine. It's a typically developed or traditionally developed vaccine. So if you've been holding out, you don't have to hold out any longer because you don't like the vaccine. I encourage everyone to use the website vaccines.gov to find a nearby provider and get the booster. And for more on this report, I'd like to turn to Acting Deputy Chief of Public Health, Sean O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Again, I think this will be another quick review of our surveillance. All of our science, as our county executive pointed, is towards this this wave beginning to recede. Our wastewater surveillance is showing lower COVID totals in the wastewater. The test positivity, both in Montgomery County as well as across the state, has slowly been coming down. The positive numbers of transmissions recorded by PCR tests has slowly been coming down. And our hospital beds, the percentage of beds with COVID patients, that has also been coming down. So all the signs are pointing towards this wave starting to retreat. Of course, we know we're going into that time of year when we sometimes see increases. And so, and not just from COVID, but from other respiratory diseases. Across the state, the hospitalizations are coming down statewide. Looking at our emergency department visits, so people who are essentially outpatients at emergency departments, across the top you can see the different age groups for COVID diagnoses, discharge diagnoses, and at most ages, those have come down quite a lot. We're still seeing some heightened activity of our seniors who are going to emergency departments to be diagnosed, still having raised elevated levels of COVID at that age group. When we look at some of the other diseases, when we look at influenza, we are not seeing in our county any significant increases yet of people going to the emergency department. Although we're starting to see for RSV, we're starting to see those numbers go up a bit. It's important to notice that there are different for each of these diseases. So it doesn't take a very large number of RSV cases to show this increase here. Usually it's not an illness that causes significant symptoms to go to emergency departments, but we're starting to see some activity, which is a sign that that's starting to ramp up. One thing I want to share, this is the U.S. data, same type of information, emergency department visits with a discharge diagnoses as a percentage of all visits to the emergency department. And assuming the other rationale for visits holds relatively constant, it does show us a change in respiratory disease. I know there's a lot of all the different ages are here, but if you look at the light green line, that's the all ages, you can see that over this wave here on the right, which is we've been experiencing for the past few months, it has a similar amplitude and time frame as the wave that happened last December and January, which gives me the impression that there's similar amounts of illnesses that are occurring because of respiratory disease, largely COVID in this case, as in December and January. However, the severity of it has been much less. Last month and September's deaths across Maryland are lower than any other point in any other wave during COVID. And so that's good news. They're still much higher than things like influenza and other respiratory disease. So we're still being vigilant, especially with our seniors, but it's encouraging that this wave is showing lower severe illness. And then finally, just a reminder that we're still, there's still opportunities to get COVID tests from a variety of sources and opportunities to get vaccinated. We know there's been a little bit of frustrations of trying to find a vaccination appointment, depending on your insurance, but hopefully more and more providers are having the vaccine, and it's becoming a little bit easier to make those appointments. Those are all the updates we have related to COVID and respiratory disease. If there's no other additions from Dr. Davis or Dr. Bridgers, we're happy to go to questions.
None from me.
Nothing else. Thank you.
Any questions from members of the media for Acting Deputy Chief Sean O'Donnell? Going once, twice. Okay, does not look like there are any questions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. County Executive, for today's media briefing.